My full name is William R. Sanchez. I was born in El Paso, Texas on July the 18th, 1918. My father's name was Enrique Sanchez. My mother's name was Josefa Sanchez. I have an elder brother, or I had an elder brother and an elder sister. My elder brother's name was Manuel Sanchez, and my sister's name was Concepcion Sanchez. My mother died when I was 1.5 years old. And my father died when I was 8 years old. So I became an orphan at a real young age. I was fortunate that I had an uncle who was willing to take not only me, but my brother and sister. And so I grew up in Huntington Park. It so happens that in 1940, they passed the draft bill. I had a scholarship to go to UCLA, but I kept reading in the papers all summer who they were going to take. There were no deferments or anything, and the more I read, it was me. So I went up to the federal building and talked to the recruiting sergeant and told him about my dilemma. And he said, "Son, have I got a deal for you?" I should have been ready just then when he said that. But he said, "If you are willing to serve in an outpost outside of the United States, you can fulfill your commitment in 2 years instead of 3. And I said, "I can handle that." So finally, the first week in October, we set out for the Philippines. The bands were playing, hoopla, the boats were blowing their horns, and they gave us a great send-off. But as we went underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, little did we know that of those of us who were on board ship, only 1 out of 3 would be making it back home. When you first see Corregidor, you're in awe because it is a self-sustaining fortress. They have their own water system, they have their own electricity, and they have their own railroad. We got settled on Corregidor, and we were all turned to duty. They moved me to Harbor Defense Headquarters. The name of my battery was Headquarters Battery, Harbor Defense of Manila and Subic Bay. You don't find many batteries with that long a name. Then when they named General MacArthur commander of all of the Far East forces, I became member of his staff, and I worked in the intelligence section. I was on duty at the H station before the war from 4 o'clock to 8 in the morning. Comes December the 8th, and one of the fellow soldiers, a kid named Katz, wakes me up and he says, "Sanchez, wake up, it's time to go on place." And then when I was fully awake, he says, "The Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor." Well, that woke me up real fast. But he told me, "We're now in the state of war. When you go to the H station, you got to identify yourself and all the things." I got there, it was in chaos. A lot of things were going on. 7 hours after they bombed Pearl Harbor, they bombed not only the island fortress of Corregidor, but the naval bases at Subic Bay and Cavite, and the airfields, Clark Field and Nichols Field. And outside of the Arizona, you could say that the Philippines incurred more damage than they did in Hawaii as far as casualties were concerned. The Japanese were bombing us furiously, so for 5 months I was in combat every day. They would bomb us from early morning to the sunset, and then at night they would fly one plane just to keep us awake, which gets to be pretty uneasy for you. The Japanese decided to invade Corregidor on the night of Cinco de Mayo, which every Hispanic knows is a big day for the holidays and everything. And they came over in big droves at the beginning. The Marines were in charge of the defense of the beaches, and the man that was in charge put me in charge of a machine gun position protecting the North Dock, which gave me a ringside seat to everything that was happening. The first attack they made, we repelled them. We really incurred some heavy casualties on them. And during the lull, before the first attack and the second attack that was forthcoming, they laid a barrage along the beaches, which knocked out my machine gun position. Colonel Bowler, who was the adjutant, told me that they had landed tanks at Monkey Point and that we didn't have the weapons to defend against tanks, and that General Wainwright was going to go over to work out a surrender. He went out to work out a surrender for Corregidor. However, General Homa says, no, you're commander of all the islands. We want complete surrender of the Philippines. He had no alternative but to surrender. I talked to the adjutant. He says, we're going to lower the post flag, and it's going to be handed to you. And it's going to be up to you to see that it doesn't fall into enemy hands. Well, in the manual, you can't bury the flag or you can't burn it. So I was wondering what I was going to do to dispose of it. However, when they handed it to me, it was full of shreds from all the bombing and the shelling. So I decided to shred it. Everybody was apprehensive because they were coming at noon, and when the Japanese came, they approached Melinda Tunnel. They had tanks. All the soldiers had fixed bayonets. The surrender at Melinda Tunnel was kind of chaotic because, like I say, they came in tanks. They had bayonets fixed. Everything was going fine. The first thing they ordered is to put all your arms in a pile. And I was on a detail of a dozen men, and they marched us out to the battlefield, out to Monkey Point. And there we were introduced to a young medical officer who spoke fluent English, and he told us, he says, I want you fellows to get a good night's rest because you have a very important detail to carry out in the morning. The detail you have to do is you're going to pick up all the American and Filipino dead. Do not touch the Japanese or come close to them. They took us to the railway station and they loaded us into boxcars, and they put 100 of us in each boxcar. So it was standing room only, but men were vomiting, men were sick and everything. And we finally got to a place where they unloaded us, and it was so great just to get some fresh air. When we looked across the lot, there was a big group of prisoners of war out there. They were from Bataan. And we joined them and marched the last 26 kilometers of the death march with them to Camp Cabanatuan. When we got to Japan, it was already November. It was cold. We noticed that before we walked into the camp, there were other prisoners of war in there, and we wondered who can they be since we were the first ones to leave the Philippines. It happened to be British prisoners of war from Singapore, Hong Kong, and some naval personnel from the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. I was captive 42 months, which is 3.5 years.